Trump reversed course. Chips that were once banned are now being shipped straight into China, but not without a catch. Inside a sealed briefing room in Beijing, China's Cyberspace Administration, according to Reuters, summoned Nvidia executives to address serious security concerns tied to the H20 chip. Regulators demanded proof the chip lacked remote shutdown or tracking features. And People's Daily, the Communist Party's official mouthpiece, issued a blunt challenge. Nvidia, how can I trust you? This confrontation isn't about semiconductors alone. It's about power over infrastructure and control over future systems. Only weeks earlier, the Trump administration had tightened curbs on AI chips, effectively banning H20 sales to China. Nvidia responded by writing down $4.5 billion in inventory, while AMD flagged an $800 million loss, according to Bloomberg. But the pressure of financial markets shifted the calculus. Facing weak demand in U.S. Treasury auctions, high interest costs, and increasing investor flight toward BRICS currencies, Washington reversed itself. Bloomberg reports that Nvidia was granted permission to resume selling H20 chips, albeit older models. The stated goal, according to U.S. AI czar David Sachs, was not to empower China, but to deprive Huawei of domestic scale. There's a contradiction here. The U.S. is now actively enabling chip sales into China, while simultaneously accusing Beijing of surveillance and IP theft. And China isn't letting these shipments flow freely. It's demanding evidence, guarantees, and audits. Reuters confirmed that regulators are probing Nvidia's chips for backdoors, even while Chinese firms queue to buy them. At the same time, Nvidia ordered 300,000 more H20 chips from TSMC to meet rising demand in China, Windows Central reported, demonstrating that commercial reality is, honestly, steamrolling strategic caution. The same chips Washington once called a security threat are now a diplomatic currency. The Wall Street Journal notes, this policy reversal is drawing bipartisan criticism. Lawmakers accuse the Trump administration of abandoning long-term containment goals for short-term export revenue. Industry insiders warn the precedent is dangerous. Concessions made under economic stress will become strategic liabilities. The irony deepens. H20 was built to comply with Biden-era export controls. Now, it's simultaneously a second-tier product and a primary bargaining chip. According to FT, this loophole is accelerating China's efforts to develop their own substitutes faster. While the United States tries to thread this needle, BRICS is moving in the opposite direction. According to Reuters, the bloc's finance ministers have formally proposed an alternative international monetary fund quota structure. They've also backed a new credit guarantee system under the New Development Bank, denominated in local currencies. This isn't speculation. It's institutional divergence. And it's not just diplomatic. Trump just hit India with a 25% tariff. AP reports, for continuing oil purchases from Russia. The United States also warned China that similar penalties would follow if it didn't scale back. But both countries rejected the threats. India's foreign ministry said its Russian oil strategy is, quote, time-tested, and China responded by asserting its sovereign right to buy from whomever it pleases. While Washington punishes India for energy choices, it asks the same country to remain a key partner in Indo-Pacific defense strategy. While it accuses China of manipulating artificial intelligence markets, it's selling it AI chips to prevent worse outcomes. While it warns BRICS not to bypass the dollar, it slaps tariffs that encourage them to do exactly that. Let's stop here. Because so far this has looked like strategy. But is it? A month ago, the Bureau of Labor Statistics revised U.S. jobs data down by 258,000, according to the Wall Street Journal. The market fell 3% on the news. The White House blamed the data agency, and Trump threatened to fire its director. But the damage wasn't statistical. It was structural. At the same time, Reuters confirms the Fed refused to cut interest rates. Jerome Powell announced that rates would remain steady through at least September. So fiscal tightening continued even as the labor market cracked. In response, the Treasury adjusted its auction strategy. According to the Financial Times, long-term bond issuance was reduced by $2 to $3 billion to avoid pushing yields higher. Instead, it focused on shorter-term debt, where borrowing costs are less visible, but more dangerous over time. The borrowing requirement for the final quarter of fiscal 2025 is now projected to exceed $1 trillion. That figure, per Bloomberg, reflects a broader loss of market confidence. Foreign participation in bond auctions is falling, yields are rising, and pressure is mounting. Here's the contradiction. Washington is courting capital markets with promises of stability while also escalating a tariff war that erodes global supply chains. It's pushing Nvidia chips into China while warning China that using them is a national security risk. Meanwhile, China isn't waiting. The state is massively funding Huawei and SMIC. According to Bloomberg, Huawei is testing its Ascend 910D chip as a power-efficient rival to Nvidia's H100. It doesn't need to outperform, just come close enough to compete on cost. Once parity is reached, China will go global. Huawei chips won't just fill domestic gaps, they'll be exported, particularly to markets the US can't sanction: BRICS, ASEAN, the Global South. And these chips will be cheap. Back home, reshoring remains a challenge. According to the Wall Street Journal, AMD estimates chips produced at TSMC's Arizona facility will cost up to 20% more than those made in Taiwan. Without subsidies, they aren't viable. But subsidies come at a cost: debt. And debt markets are growing hostile. The United States wants to dominate AI. But if it loses cost competitiveness in chips and labor and simultaneously alienates key energy and capital partners, what leverage remains? Even the policy goals are clashing. According to Reuters, Trump now supports the Chip Security Act, a bill requiring exporters to embed tracking modules in high-performance chips. But this very idea is what triggered China's backdoor investigation in the first place. What Washington sees as safety, Beijing sees as sabotage. Jensen Huang, Nvidia's CEO, praised China's AI ecosystem in a recent interview. At the same time, his company is under investigation by that ecosystem. He wants market access. They want guarantees. The trust deficit is growing, despite the sales. According to Bloomberg, the BRICS bloc expects semiconductor demand across its member states to exceed $210 billion by 2032. That's not hypothetical, it's a material shift in global demand, away from Western firms and toward local producers. All of this has consequences. The US is funding its trade war with increasingly expensive debt. Jobs are being erased. Supply chains are realigning. American exporters are caught in contradiction, punished if they comply, punished if they don't. And all the while, BRICS continues building alternative systems. Not out of ideology, but out of necessity. Because the cost of depending on a weaponized dollar or a volatile chip policy is now too high. At the heart of this breakdown is something far more consequential than tariffs or semiconductors: trust in American consistency. According to the Financial Times, since Trump's reversal on chip exports, multiple EU trade envoys have privately warned their governments that US industrial policy is becoming, well, tactically unpredictable. Germany's Economic Affairs Ministry has already begun preparing a contingency framework to fast-track technology licensing with China, sidestepping US regulatory bottlenecks. Meanwhile, Reuters confirms that Saudi Arabia and the UAE are in early-stage talks with SMIC and Huawei to establish local AI chip design hubs, backed by sovereign wealth. If successful, these Gulf states will leapfrog Western suppliers and align themselves with China's AI ecosystem. That signals a larger fracture. The geopolitical split isn't East versus West. It's rules-based versus outcome-based. And, that's why Vietnam, Indonesia, and South Africa, three countries traditionally seen as swing states in trade alignments, are now attending BRICS Plus forums to explore alternatives to dollar clearing systems, according to Bloomberg. The BRICS New Development Bank has already opened bilateral credit lines to finance semiconductor equipment deals without SWIFT. This isn't de-globalization, it's re-globalization, under new terms. And if Washington doesn't re-establish credibility fast, it won't be chip sales it loses. It will be the system itself. So what happens next? Does China allow Nvidia to sell in exchange for tech insights? Does India continue fueling its economy with discounted Russian crude? Does BRICS finalize its new IMF alternative and end dollar dominance from the inside out? The old rules are eroding. The US wrote the system. It's now rewriting the exceptions. It created the chip war. It just sent the chips back. It demanded compliance. BRICS said no. It promised jobs. The data said otherwise. This isn't collapse. It's recalibration. Through forced guarantees. Through rejected orders. Through a job market that's already in retreat. And if the next move is Washington demanding foreign governments buy more US bonds to stabilize its budget, then that won't be policy. It will be surrender. We're glad you're enjoying this video. Please like and subscribe. Check out another video that is now on your screen.